Hey, what's up, guys? Helseth here. So this is a video I've been meaning to make for a while, but I never knew actually what time I should make it or whether I should do it or whatnot. But I've wanted to talk about this, and I figure that now before the World Championship, might be as good a time as any to bring up this conversation, which is basically the issues we have right now in Guild Wars 2, not only as a competitive game, but obviously as an esports as well. Um, and what we can do as a community, what the competitive scene can do, and what ArenaNet can do to fix what issues there are in the game. Now, I guess I should introduce myself a little bit more. I go by the alias Lord Helseth. I've played competitive Guild Wars 2 since basically beta. Um, been around since far before there was any like money in the game, and all that stuff. Obviously a pretty public figure. Some people dislike my content, right? Which is fine. But I'm basically unplugged from that content right now. Take anything I've said before with a grain of salt, which I realize might be difficult for some to do. But at least try to hear out my opinion on this, because it's not just my opinion. This is something that a lot of competitive players and just people in general have been talking a lot about in Guild Wars 2, about basically the struggles it currently has in the competitive scene. Now, you might want to ask, like, why should we care about a competitive scene? Like, you might be a PvEer that literally never stepped your foot inside of PvP, or even if you play PvP, you have no interest whatsoever in anything related to competition, and that's fine, right? That's actually fine. Um, but Guild Wars 2 definitely benefits from a competitive scene. One of the disconnects I've noticed between the PvE community and the competitive community is that the whole Guild Wars 2 esports is a poor investment idea. That why are you putting money into competitive Guild Wars 2 when there is this issue, and you could instead do something in the lines of hiring more people and such. So I'm just going to open by trying to debunk this a little bit. ArenaNet has confirmed that all of the money that goes into um, the esports side of Guild Wars 2, all of the competitive sides and everything attached to it, right? All of this is marketing money being spent, and marketing money is not magically going to transform into salaries for employees. If they would completely scrap the esports of Guild Wars 2, then they would simply have it for some weird ad. I mean, we've all seen the infamous taxi ad, right? And honestly, I'd rather have the most disastrous esports scene ever over a scary ass taxi ad where they embarrass themselves. However, basically, there's more things to this. It's not just like, okay, well, it's a slightly better thing to invest in. Esports is a fantastic game to have, fantastic thing to have in a game. Sorry, um, for a multitude of reasons, right? Now, esports basically is the end game of a competitive scene. It is basically you can compete in a game. When I say compete in a game, I basically mean you as an individual try to reach the highest possible level you can in a game. Right? You're reaching to become as good as you can. And the esports is basically the dream, the end game that fuels such a community. It'll basically create professionals that will create content, which will basically improve the community. Um, and it leads to not only will the events lead to a lot of more people maybe spotting the game. Ideally, when esport teams are picked up by sponsors, like these sponsors have a vast community of people that don't know about Guild Wars, but they'll still check it out to support their team name and all that stuff. This is something that happens in various games, and more organizations are entering the esports because of this. It's a fantastic way just to market the game. But aside from that, it's not just the marketing, but it's a certain longevity to the game that's added. Competitive players, esports players in particular, will always continue to try to stay at the top, right? So we will be practicing endlessly. We will be discovering new texts and all that stuff, which means that there's more and more and more layers added to the game. The whole idea of end game content is basically endless when you're thinking about esports, because people are always going to try to one up another. And someone that has basically gone through all the content of the game is still going to find that he can become better at this and this and this and this. And having an esports scene really continues to fuel this, as esports is very much linked to competitive play, right? Um, People that invest an insane level of time in the game are bound to stream it, make some content for it. Many of the biggest names in Guild Wars 2 period are people that are involved in esports, either through casting or simply being a player or having been a player. There's a lot of people that are basically continuing to make content, which will continue to foster the esports scene, are linked. The competitive scene are linked to the esports. Um, and this is why we, as a community, should do everything we can to make sure that we, instead of uh, drag down the esports, I guess, we should help foster it. And I realize that you might say, well, Helseth, you're just biased, right? You're playing for money. And this is true. But it's also true that I believe that pretty much, well, that would be silly to say, but I believe that I'm one of the people that loves this game the most in the world. I I've been very passionately negative about certain things, sure, but it's basically been fueled by love for the game, believe it or not. And I want the best for the game. And if you want the best for the game, then there really is no negative side towards uh, the actual competitive side of the game. Even you, as someone that might never want to try PvP ever, you should still theoretically, if you could pick between having an esports in Guild Wars and not having an esports in Guild Wars, when you consider the fact that you will gain nothing from the disappearance of it, and that the game will just continue to grow and have more competitive players, which will continue to play. There's games. I watched a Warcraft 3 tournament yesterday, Warcraft 3, which was the game I first competed in, which is insane. People are still playing Warcraft 3. People are still playing Melee. People are still playing all these games, and it's always fostering competition. Even in old Nintendo games, what's the kind of community that remains in the game and still play to this day? It's the speedrunning community, and that's a competition. It's a competitive scene within that game. Um, it creates a lot of positivity for the game, and you should really want it to succeed, not hate on it, because you're not going to gain anything from that. All right, so let's actually move into the problems, right? So there's three really core issues that I believe are linked to Goers 2, and I will start with the first one when it comes to the esports. Now, this is not as much related to most of the people watching this. I'll get to that later, but this is linked very much to myself, teams I've played with, players I've played with, and ArenaNet, right? And that's the instability of the scene. Now, anyone that actually watches Guild Wars 2 and the competitive events of it will know that there's basically team swaps happening all the time. This always generally happens in the esports, right? But not as much as it happens in Guild Wars 2. And a reason for this is simply because of the kind of state that the esports scene in Guild Wars 2 is in. We're in this kind of insane state where the esports has never been better for a competitive player. I mean, you're playing for more money than ever. You're having incredible trips left and right. The events seem to only get bigger and bigger. There's a lot of really good things for players, but at the same time, it's gotten worse. And what I mean with this is that because of the level of money that's been invested in Guild Wars 2, people kind of expected it to maybe not take off, but they expected it to exponentially grow. And when it didn't, the competitive players in Guild Wars 2 are basically playing the game. They're investing an insane level of time, many playing it full time, um, for something that they don't know if it's going to continue. Because in the back of their head, they're always thinking, well, we don't know if this is the very final event because, well, the viewership didn't do good. Um, there was this and this and this problem according to during the event. Like, is there actually going to be an event after this? And because people think like this, they don't look at the long term. They don't care about their team. They don't care about the Guild Wars 2 scene. They don't care. So people cheat. People will backstab their teammates. They will reform with other teammates. They basically do everything they can to do as well as possible. And this is understandable. Like, I know it sounds despicable, but if you've invested, let's say you've invested 5 hours a day, right? Which is a pretty small amount, right? But compared to what some people are doing. But 5 hours a day, you're spending 5 hours a day trying to get as good as you can with your team and all that stuff. And now you're at the brink after having done this for 4 months in a row. You're at the stage here where either all of this time that you spent doing all your best and potentially being able to, let's say, go to America and play for $200,000, right? Or $100,000 in the Pro League case. And you have to win this game. You have to win every single game. Like your team has done poorly. Or you could theoretically just leave your team that you've been playing with and join that other team, just have a free qualifying, because there's some team that's trying to recruit you because they want your team to be as weak as possible, because then they have a free qualifying. And it's basically things like this that's going on, that everyone is just looking out for themselves and not the long run of Guild Wars 2. And I believe that a big reason for this is simply that we don't know what's happening. In the Go 4 days, certainly there were much less money back in the day, but in the Go 4 days, and what I mean with Go 4 days is that Guild Wars 2 used to have weeklies, essentially, a tournament every single week. Where there would be a tournament in ESL, and there would be some prize money at the end of it. And after 3 or 4 weeks, there would be a monthly, and the monthly would be a larger amount of money, and then would continue like that. Teams could do terrible 5 weeks in a row, but they would stick with each other, and they would be aiming for the next tournament together all the time. They would be like, okay, we did bad this weekly, but the next one we can do better. There was a certain, you could go for the long run. Fit 5 ranked dragons, which are a top tier threat for the world championship. They've been world champions and all that stuff. They stuck together for so long when it went badly. They were called 55 HP monks back in the days. And granted, the roster is quite different from before, but the core of it, right? The core of it remains. And the way it worked basically was that they could lose so many cups over and over. They were second for so long. There was a time when Cheese Mud was beating them, and then there was a time when someone else was beating them, and it kept going like this. But they kept sticking together, and now they reached into the fantastic team that they are today. And the reason they were able to do this is because just they could stick through. It wouldn't be like, well, if we lose this one event, it's completely over. There was more chances, right? And a big part of why everyone feels this way is that we don't really have any communication from ArenaNet. Events are basically being told to us. We basically get to know about events um, far too late, right? We don't have a plan because we're reliant completely on ArenaNet on these events, because ArenaNet's the only one providing these events right now. Um, we don't really see the same plan that they do. We don't have the information that they do. When Pro League Season 1 went as poorly as it did with the bunker meta, right? Um, all of us were thinking like, I don't think there's going to be a Pro League Season 2. Pro League Season 1 tanked as hard as it did, so there's probably not going to be a Pro League Season 2. So everyone played the Pro League Season 1 assuming that there was no Pro League Season 2. And in the Pro League Season 2, everyone played assuming there was no World Championships. And during this World Championships right now, everyone is playing assuming that there won't be anything else. Because we don't have the information. ArenaNet doesn't really release it, so we don't know whether ArenaNet's not releasing it simply because they don't want, they want to do it properly in some sort of fashion, or because they simply, they're thinking about doing it or not. We don't know. We don't have their figures. We don't know anything, essentially. So we're playing in the dark. And that's what's leading to a lot of the instabilities that you see in teams. Teams backstab each other left and right because they don't see the long term of this. They can't, because they're investing so much time and effort. The 5 hours was a pretty minimal statement compared to what some people are putting in and the effort they're putting in. And it's a lot of work for something you don't know if you'll be able to actually do anything with. So there's a legitimate problem with the instability of the scene, which has led to a lot of discredit to teams. Players don't take the Guild Wars 2 team seriously. Well, viewers rather, because they think, well, these aren't teams. They just drop each other at the top of a hat. And if there was more security in the actual scene itself, if we actually knew, for instance, that there would be an event after this event, then people wouldn't be as worried. So I believe that ArenaNet can really work on the communication in this, and perhaps have more smaller events, just to make sure that teams stick together and that every single tournament isn't all or nothing, because they very much are so right now. Okay, so that was a problem that none of you guys care about, right? But was still worth mentioning. Now, the biggest problem of all in Guild Wars 2 for the growth And when I say for GW2, I obviously refer to the esports, right? For the growth, um, for the continuation, and honestly for everyone, right? For the enjoyment of everyone, is the complete segregation right now that's going on between competitive players. And I don't, when I say competitive players, I don't just mean esports players. I just mean people that are competitive in a game. You will know if you're competitive or not because if you, for instance, if you play Hearthstone and you grind to legend ranks, right? Then you're playing competitively. Even if you're playing it casual competitively, you're competing and trying to reach as high as you possibly can. Um, and then there's just the casual part of Hearthstone, right? Which is like, let's say people that only reach rank 16, they don't really care. Some people, there's a lot of people that don't break rank 20. They just play some random angry chicken deck and they're happy with that. And in Guild Wars 2, there is such an insane difference and seclusion between the competitive players and just basically everyone else in Guild Wars 2. It's absolutely insane. Um, the people want different things. Um, we hang out basically, like they don't spend time in the same area. For instance, the Guild Wars 2 PvP forums has essentially no competitive players. Now there are competitive players in this game, for instance, almost all of the stream viewers for players such as myself, right? Almost all of my viewers are competitive players, people that have been in the game for a really long time. All of them pretty much have gotten legend, and all of them basically know about the depth of the game. But they don't spend time in the PvP forums. They don't post on Reddit. And they're completely separate from the community. And it's created this sort of divide right now where it's kind of like we're opposing each other instead of actually working together as a scene, right? We're actually against each other. An example of this is Reddit, right? Whenever there's a major event going on, there will be someone posting a Reddit thread. Someone will post a thread on the Reddit, giving all the information about the tournament, just giving the tournaments, giving the teams, giving everything, all the information that you might want to need if you want to spectate the event. But instead of this thread actually like being upvoted by the competitive players and even the casual base as well, so that everyone can actually see this because it's just useful information. You will see that many people will completely downvote the thread, like they will nuke it to oblivion, and almost all of the comments will be like, like lol, Guild Wars 2 esports still a thing, lol, and all that stuff, why are they wasting their money with this? Lol, boring. I don't want to watch this. I don't care about GW2 PvP. Give me my new glider skins. Okay, maybe that doesn't exist, but it still would be funny if it was, right? And it hurts the game. Nobody gains anything from the fact that this is nuked. Why is the community doing this? I'm making this thread basically discussing the problems, but I would love to hear it from the community side as well, right? Like, why do you as a person try to drag down these threads? You people that might want to be interested in getting into like not only playing but just spectating the competitive scene, they have no option to do it. And with the community creating this divide of sorts, it basically means that because people circle jerk around, they always do, right? Like we always circle jerk. Like that's how we do. If you're part of a certain community, you're gonna basically follow their tendencies, right? So people that spend time in the Reddit will start doing what other people do. They'll see and talk about the same issues, and they'll respond the same way, and it'll just continue in this cycle of people just segregating themselves further instead of us trying to integrate each other. And it's a really big issue. It might not seem that way, but whenever there's a huge event and all that stuff, let's say we have an event with 5,000 viewers, which sure you might say, oh well, that's not all that impressive. It's only 5,000 viewers. I believe the Pro League actually, the Pro League Season 2 had 8,000 viewers, but that's beside the point, right? Okay, so taking that, 8,000 viewers, a lot of people watching, a lot of people enjoying the event, a lot of people spectating it and such. There was no thread on the forums about it. There was no thread on the forum. Um, Nothing. Nobody posted about it. Not a single thread. Maybe it came later, like some team that about the team that won. But it was completely dead. And I remember looking at the Reddit post, which it had a Reddit post. There were 16 comments. It had 52% in the the upvote thing. I don't even know how that counts. But that's the World Championship. There's 8,000 people watching. Why? How does it not reflect on the post? Rather, something I do see from the Reddit is that whenever there's anything negative at all about the esports, about the PvP, about anything around it, the Guilds 2 community, the Guilds 2 Reddit community, and the PvE community, essentially, the casual community, will all jump on it. And like this thread, there was a thread a couple of days ago that's had like 350 upvotes, far above all the others. Well, maybe it's not far above the others, but it was massive. It was at the top of the page, and if you looked at the actual score, I don't do Reddit, right? I don't do Reddit, but it was by far the highest publicized thread, and it was about a corrupt ESL admin. And I'm sure you guys know of this, right? Because you spend time on Reddit, right? So it was some douche admin that acted like an idiot and then kicked a guy, and it was controversy. And whenever there's any controversy at all about the scene, it'll explode. It'll get so much. It'll get so much attention, and I don't understand how we can have so much attention for this. However, that there's absolutely nothing when there's anything that's actually positive for the game. Like, we're not working together to grow this game. Bear in mind that there's nothing negative that can happen if you're trying to work for the game, right? Like, you're trying to make sure that the game blossoms as much as you can. There's nothing. And it hasn't always been like this. That's the messed up part. It hasn't always been like this. There used to be, every single Go For Weekly, there used to be a thread of plenty of comments, like way more than the World Championships. A minor weekly used to have more publicity on the casual side than the World Championship right now. Obviously, the World Championship right now have more views, but again, it's a segregated community in general, and it's it's insane to see how it's gone. And I believe my theory of how this happened is that essentially there's a mix of things, right? But essentially, one of the key things is that Guild Wars 2 has tried to appeal to everyone in kind of a way, in PvP, right? Like people people that look at the Guild Wars 2 PvP system right now can see that there's basically something for everyone there, to the point where if you don't want to be a competitive player, but you still want to reach the highest rank in Guild Wars 2, you can do that super easily with no stress at all. You just grind your cute little legend wings and you're done. You never have to play a good player in your life. And it's clear how segregated the community is, like from balance talk where people will discuss completely different levels of balance. It's insane to see the difference, to everything around it, right? Like the queuing experience, everything. It's so clearly different. And I believe that before there was a clear system, right? Before, back in the days I'm talking about, they used to be simple. Like there's a leaderboard. There's I believe a very clear leaderboard. Once you get in the top 1,000, you'll see where you are. And once you get in the top 500, you'll get a glorious hero armor piece by the end of the season. And if you got top 1,000, I believe you would get a llama mini pet. Um, and those are just given away like candy now. They used to have people used to love llamas, man. Like I remember when I got some llama cards and I basically just threw them away. I got back home and I saw like a stream with 800 viewers just because they were giving away llama cards. It was insane. Like, why did I do that? That's insane. But my point behind this is that the community really has changed and segregated itself to an insane level where there's basically different tiers of communities, right? All over the place. And they don't interact with each other at all. And they look at the game so differently that when they see the other side, they're like, what the fuck are you doing? In a sense, You literally give no fucks about each other. And it's just it's just sad to see that it's gone to this state, because it wasn't like this. It wasn't always like this. Like we've kind of devolved as a scene in a lot of ways. Um, and I would love to see that the scene somehow grows up to actually linking each other again. And I believe that we pro players and any competitive player in general can help a lot with this. We just have to create better content and more content for you guys to get into. I believe that like guides and such can help you look at the game in a different way. There's some very, very, very deep players of the game right now, which it's fantastic to appreciate them. I look at Guild 2 as a strategic fighting game, and I just love every part of the competitive game. Um, and I would love it for people to share my passion, right? So I believe that from my end, I could do better with guides. I could do better to like help bring up the community, right? I believe that ArenaNet really needs to do something right now about the fact that there is nothing that prompts the community to become competitive. Certainly, if you don't want to be competitive ever, that's your choice. If you just want to play a casual PvP, that's your choice. But I believe that ArenaNet should really have some sort of way where it's clearly very skill gated, a lot of prestige to reach a certain tier, similar to how guild capes were in Guild Wars 1. Similar to, you remember in Season 1 in League of Legends, or maybe it was Season 2, where you would get a certain Jarvan skin if you got gold or higher. I remember how that drove people crazy. Even the legendary backpack was a fantastic idea, but it's just been distributed incorrectly. I sincerely hope that ArenaNet will try to look into a way of. They've said in the post that they wanted to make it a little more prestigious, and I really believe that if we had carrots attached to skill, and that they didn't make it such a grind fest in the pip progression system, right? That if there was something that you generally had to be really good, maybe you had to queue with some friends and get really good together and reach a certain level, and then you would get like a glorious hero armor piece, right? Which basically no longer exists in the game, right? I would love that. I would love that. That's extended armor. It's rare armor. People would care about it, similar to how people care about the gear in raids. Like all of the content shouldn't have to be available for everyone. I won't get like any of the content that's PvE only, right? Because I don't PvE, period, and that's fine. But I believe that Gear 2, the community in general has kind of adopted this mentality that everyone should be able to get everything. Like everyone should be able to get their legendary backpack, um, which is just false. Not everyone deserves to be legend. Like legend in Hearthstone is the top 0.02% or something like that. That's an insane statistic. That means that just having the legend back piece is impressive. Like it's impressive to a lot of people. A lot of people play a lot aiming to get legend, and once they get legend, they will aim to get top 500 legend, and after that, they will aim to get even higher. People will constantly aim to do better, and that carrot, even though it might seem pointless, it really does. It really does change the perspective for a lot of people, and all you need is a perspective change, a little bit. And like just give it a try, and just motivate yourself, and you'll see like you might just find that you love the game more than ever. Like get improving in it, spamming duels to become better, learning specific rotation matchups, taking, let's say you are a revenant and you take your I don't know, mesmer friend, and you guys roam together and you try to like win all your games. Like there's so much content right there that could be enjoyed if people could actually transition into competitive play. But right now there's a gate, and that doesn't even get into the gate between being a competitive player and entering the esports, which I won't even get into now because that's another really long story. And so that's what ArenaNet could do, right? And the pro players could help do more content, being more inclusive and all that stuff. That includes competitive players. If you're really good at the game, a lot of people know that you're really good, right? Like, if you're really good, then just stream. I will do my best to host everyone that seems good. If like reach out, if you're a good player and you're a streamer, hit me up. Like I host people whenever I'm done. I will host you 400 trolls that will spam your chat. Why not? Um, and make YouTube videos. Again, reach out to me. I will publicize. I will help you get some more views, right? Like we need to work together on improving the scene, not against each other. And the community. This goes to a lot of you guys on Reddit in particular. I mentioned Reddit because I browse Reddit. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it because it basically keeps me informed on everything about Guild Wars. But at the same time, we're so detached from each other. Like it's insane how different we are. So a lot of it goes out to you as well. Like you can help make the game better, and you will gain from it. Everyone will gain from it. Everyone has to gain from working together. And if there's a legitimate reason for you to downvote every single PvP guide and video and content and stream you see, then that's fine. Like that's fine. Then give it to me so I can actually see your perspective. Because from my end, I just think that right now we basically have a blind hate for each other, um, which I believe this discussion can help, right? And third, because this video is becoming way longer than I'd hoped, I even wrote down notes, right? Like look at how try hard I was, right? I wrote down notes, but I'm really bad at doing that kind of stuff, right? So I just wound up talking a lot. Hopefully I made some sense. Um, Number three, and which is really important, is the production value of the Pro League games, right? Like the production of the Pro League. So the biggest offender of this was the European qualifiers, which where the ESL slash ArenaNet slash whoever decided to fly out players, no, casters to US and then cast European games from the USA, which means that the casters basically had 300 ping, and it was just a mess to watch. There's been crashes so often. There's so many technical issues left and right. Um, this is a genuine problem, but it's not as much like this is something that they know of, and they'll have to work on. They'll have to prioritize the viewing experience overall. But something that the casters, a lot of them are completely detached from the competitive players. Similar to how I said the communities, a lot of the casters are too. Um, there's an exception to this, which is um, Curix and Storm. They were competitive players and they entered it. They know basically the NA scene. They're very much in touch. Maybe not as much right now as they used to be, but they're trying to keep in touch as much as they can. And I'm not saying that the European casters don't try or keep in touch, but they're not. There's a serious detachment from the competitive scene there, and it basically leads to this case where they're kind of part of the people that don't know what to do, what to show to further showcase the game. But in my opinion, I'm not gonna I'm not just gonna complain, but I actually have some genuine things to mention. Um, ArenaNet, again, I'm going to try to bracket this into three things, right? ArenaNet needs to attempt to make it more easy to spectate. There's many ways that can be. UI can be cleaned up. They've done some good cleanups, but there's still more. Camera angles needs to stop being used, basically. You can't do the overhead camera angle and all that stuff. At least not much at all, because it basically gives no information at all. Not even a professional player can tell what's happening when you're doing the overhead camera view. And there's a lot of things like that. Another thing that casters need to polish is they need to stop jumping in between perspectives all the time. If there's a fight, they should. It sounds insane, right? It sounds insane, but just they should have the camera on basically one person, max jump into two during an entire fight every single time. Because right now, basically the action is way too sporadic. You miss so many things because you can actually never get a view of what's happening. GW2 isn't as hard to spectate as tournaments make it look. But because casters have this tendency of just jumping around, because many of them aren't actual competitive players, so they don't actually know what to watch out for, so they just jump from this perspective. This guy's low, I'll hop to this. This guy, and the casting basically becomes this nature of nothing's actually commentated on. Like, red team is winning this fight. This guy went down. This guy is low. This kind of stuff. There's nothing on the individual skills because the individual skill levels and the plays that can happen in game. There's so much depth and so many plays that happen that it's actually insane. But they're missed out all the time because you only get these weird jump cuts in between. Again, Guild Wars 2 is a fighting game, and we should enjoy the fighting game nature of the combat because there's so many cool things to mention. Just as a random note, right? Just as a random note, warriors, their adrenaline F1 skill, Skullcrack on the mace. On high levels, you will see that a warrior will use his F1 and aim it on a person in front of him, and the person in front of him will spot that he's doing the Skullcrack, dodge, and then it will turn out that the warrior wasn't actually aiming for him. He was instead aiming for a creature, an AI, or anything beside him. And he hits this. He gets his cleansing air proc. He gets his defense procs and the regeneration. So he doesn't lose anything of having missed the skill. He baited the dodge of the player, and he got some adrenaline. You never see that. You never see that there's some fake out casts to bait stuff, and you don't see me casting my MOA and then stopping it at 99% just to bait that Mesmer's Distortion, because there's too much going on, and the casters are making it too difficult for themselves to actually pay attention to it. And I really believe that a really big improvement would be if they just try to make it consistently one angle and all that stuff. And yeah, basically, honestly, I've been going on for too long to this, but there is a lot of viewership issues right now in Guild Wars 2, and I believe it can be so much better. But we really need to stop having stream crashes. We need to stop having. We can never have a lagging caster again. If there's a lagging caster, then you need to realize that the the quality of the viewing experience is so much more important because there's so many people that could appreciate this game if they actually got to see what was happening. But when you have a stream going on for 4 hours that has 300 ping, you just kill the entire stream. You just made it completely impossible to spectate. You made it impossible to analyze. You made it impossible for the pro leaguers to make content out of it. You basically just killed it. Like I would personally rather have Jebro in his bedroom streaming that thing with the worst production quality of all time. He'll be in his like pajamas and all that stuff, but he will have proper ping and he won't have a 300 ping nonsense, right? And it's something that really should be prioritized as much as possible because it's happened far too often. And yeah, like again, I would love the feedback from the people there. Like, how do you feel watching fights and all that stuff? Do you feel like you can catch people? There's a lot of people that watch my stream, right? So if you watch my stream, compare my stream content to the tournament content. How do you feel the difference, like in terms of expectation? Because I believe that people can catch plays and whatnot when it's just from one player in a fight. But when you make it this jumping, you make the action worse. And if you want to be able to focus on the rotation, well, what can we do then? What can the casters and ESL do to improve the perspective from there? Like I remember that I forgot what they were called, but there was this NA crew, right? That was doing streams for GW2, and they had this equipment where you would see the gameplay here, and then a little window would pop up at the bottom, where you would see a rotation or a different fight and all that stuff. And I think that would be a great idea to have. You have a doing a fight, doing a big fight, you have or doing a 1v1, whatever you want to see, you focus on one person to make sure if it's just for it being a good fight, and then you switch, then you have like rotation aspects in the bottom. Um, yeah, there's a lot of issues, right, in Gears 2. But this is what I'll say, and I'll say it with full confidence, and that is that Gears 2 is a fucking fantastic game. The competitive scene has some incredible players, has so much depth to it, and has so much potential. And like esports to the side and all that stuff. Granted, obviously, many of you will just take everything I'm saying as just being interested for more monetary events, right? But it's not just about that. I just want to see people, more competitive players in general, because it's become less and less all the time. And I believe that the in-game system is very much attributed to this, but I think that we're all just continuing this cycle, and it's not going to get any better unless we together make it better. Like, yeah. And again, if if the if you guys have your ideas around it, if you disagree or anything, right, then talk about it because these are real issues. They've been damping down on the scene for a lot, for you guys a lot, for everyone a lot, right? Like, what can we do to actually improve Gurus 2? What can Arena do to improve Gurus 2? And all that stuff. Because that's all we should care about. We shouldn't care about the scrap idea, because again, taxi ads, right? Alright, I've been going on for long enough. I should have actually like structured myself better, but you know what? I've been talking for a while. Thank you guys for watching. Um, I'm gonna leave the whole Peasants and Kings shebang away for this time. People might be offended and downvote. They're gonna downvote anyway. It's Reddit. Come on. All right. Again, thank you for watching.